is Przemek. I am a system architect for myself, actually. I am self-employed. I work for multiple companies doing different stuff with AD, Office 365, generally whole Microsoft suite. And this is my first conference. Hopefully it will be as good for you as it will be for me. This is my first conference as an attendee, as a speaker. I have never been in my life in any conference, so let alone speaking in English. So that's really something you should make sure that understand, that I may have some trouble speaking, maybe make some mistakes. So this session had much larger title with lots of different things written on it, and I decided that it's much shorter and much nicer this way. And actually, when I submitted this session to Tobias 6 months ago, I had a different plan. The plan was that I would show you my PowerShell module called PSWin documentation, which is supposed to help you create documentation of your Active Directory, Office 365, and Exchange. But after 6 months later, the plan was that I would be adding some more features, adding some export, import stuff, generally make it better. I have decided that I need to step up and do different thing because it wasn't just enough. So the first part of the session is about PSWin documentation module and what you can do with it. And then the second part of the session is about how I have split up this PowerShell module I had into 5 different PowerShell modules doing different things, like gathering documentation for AD, but also exporting it to Word, Excel, HTML, CSV, or doing different stuff, or even send to email. So we're getting one PowerShell module that can do it all, but is less configurable, and you can just do what the module gives you an option to do. But then there's the second part is about doing it yourself with the tools I'm giving you. All the tools I made are available on the PowerShell gallery, and all the tools are open source on GitHub, so you can play with the code, do whatever with it. So basically, that's the session goals I have already described. I'm not sure why I have the slides even. So the agenda is just me doing the demos, and that's about it. I don't have a lot of slides for you. So is that something you can see easily? No, a little bit? Okay. Better? Okay. So the idea here is that when I started with this PSWin documentation PowerShell module, it had just one command. It was start documentation, and it had no configuration whatsoever. So if you run it, you would get Active Directory documentation created in Word, Excel, and that's it. You had no ability to add any text to it. You just had to believe me, and then you would have to manually edit whatever was created. So you could just, if it exported for you the forest information, the domain information, users information, and you don't want that, you would have to remove it. So if we run this code, it's supposed to connect to your Active Directory, gather all the information. Maybe I'll just show you what it's doing. So it's gathering some information. I have a very small domain here. So it's doing this in a really fast way. So it's doing different things. I have just one domain controller, one domain within one forest. There's nothing fancy about it. So it will take like 27 seconds to gather it for my domain. But for larger domains, it may take from 1 minute to 20 minutes to 1 hour, depending on the scope of your domain. I'm still working on the optimization process for gathering the data. I need to speak with some people here that can help me with some performance issues, but generally it works. I have created this module because I have actually set up multiple ADs in my life, and with all the things I have set up, there was always a problem with documentation of it. So they always ask me, Przemek, please deliver the documentation for it. You have created it, you know it, and now write the documentation. And it was a really painful process for me because I'm not really a documentation kind of guy. So the module actually just stopped. So what it did, it created a Word document, and it created a table of content. It created forest summary with FSMO roles, optional features, so we could extracted some data for you, subnets, site links, domain controllers information, password policies, and so on. So, yeah, sure. Hopefully that's the same. Yeah, so you get group policy details, some DNS records. Of course, that's something you can deliver to your management, deliver to whoever needs this documentation, but it's not really useful for day-to-day usage because that data is kind of truncated, right? It just has 4 fields. Word is very special for that kind of information. You can, of course, make it vertical, and it may work, but for me, this is something that I can deliver to my customer. This is something I can use for auditing the domain. If I'm doing this for the customer, like I'm sent to a different site and please audit our domain, and so I just run this and get a report and I can read it. So there are different information in this. So there is also some charts. Of course, in my domain, I have like 6 users in total, so it's not really filled out, but there is even a section about domain password quality. What this does is you can provide a text file with all the passwords you want to verify your users against. So, for example, the password with the special characters, or any password that, like company name 2019 or something like that, that your users in AD use, and that you know that they don't change this password, or they just add exclamation mark, or they do something like that with it. And this module can actually test all the users against this password list and deliver information about that. So you get that in one of the sections, or somewhere here, password, empty password, known passwords. This would be the list, and it would show you the users that have the passwords that you have defined. It won't tell you which user is using which password, because that's not necessary for you. So it's not something that you can use to attack the Active Directory or something like that. It's simply giving you a list of people to, okay, inform them, send them information, please change your password immediately, or whatever. It also provides a way with people with the same password. So if there are 2 or more people using the same password, it will notify you about them. So I had a domain with about 500 groups of people using the same password. So not really fun for security. And so you have this document, it's auto-created, everything you saw there, it's generated from this module. And the thing is that it can work without any Word installation on the workstation. So it doesn't use the COM object. It uses a special DLL. There's a company called Exceed. And this DLL allows me to provide you with the documentation. So actually, this is the PS Write Word module that I have written, and it can do that kind of stuff with sending PowerShell information to Word. Now, I told you that the first part, when I created this, was just one command, and it still is one command. There is just one large configuration, which is a hash table of sorts, which you can provide like company name, like verbose messages, and you can set different settings. So if you set that you want to export to Word and at the same time to Excel, it will, rerunning the code will do that. So it will create Excel and it will create Word at the same time. If you provide the password file, here it should do the section with the password and test your users against it. There's also the sections part where you actually can define if something is supposed to show up. So you can disable the section, you can enable the section, you can add the text, you can modify it, you can make it in your language, whatever. So you can, the choice is kind of limited to what I have defined, but you can, if you don't want to see the forest summary, you can always delete this section and it won't be displayed in the final Word. So you can use, for each section, there's also a way, so if you enable the Word reporting or Excel reporting, you can disable it per section as well. So if you don't want some sections after you enable the Excel, you don't have to remove it, you can just disable it here. Now, if we rerun this same code, it should again scan Active Directory, but at the same time it should create Word and Excel for that matter. Now, the problem with that approach, and something that we are seeing now, is that it's rerunning this tool actually asks your AD again and again. So if you work on a document like this, you want things to be instant, right? You don't want to query your ID. For me, it's 2 minutes and it's not a problem. But for larger ADs, if you wait one hour for something to be delivered to you, it may be a problem. So that's why I decided, and that's why there is a reason for the split of all the functionalities that are in this module into separate modules that you can use as you wish. So you can use just the Active Directory part where the module will deliver you the information about Active Directory, and you don't have to use my Word, my Excel work. You can just do whatever with it. And I will show you that later on when it's done doing this. Unfortunately, it takes some time to actually generate this. So the thing about this hash table that we have here is that you can, of course, configure it. For example, you can change the table design to different accent. The thing is that you don't know what it is. I mean, I know what sort of information I expect here, but that's because there's no autocomplete for that. So you would have to dive into documentation, read about it a bit, and if you don't like the accent that we are using here, and that's also the reason why I have changed the approach for this module. Okay, let's wait for a moment. No, maybe not. Let's not wait. Maybe let's. Okay, let's. So the same thing is for Office 365. You have exactly the same command. You just give it a different parameter called document, and the parameter is a hash table or the dictionary with all the information. The difference is that you need to define all the connectivity, because this module can connect for you with Exchange, Azure AD, and with other stuff. So in Fiori, if you fill out the data here, it should do it for you. So it will be able to, you can provide the password in a file, or you can encrypt the password and put it in a file. It's all configurable for you. Yeah, so now we have 2 documents. That's for all the options we had from the same. The problem with Word is, like I said, that we have limited content, that we have like 5 columns. Maybe we can fit maybe 7 columns here. So in Excel, you have unlimited columns. So you would use that for your ability if you want to like do migration of AD or something like that. It's useful. I'm doing some sort of optimizations for you. For example, there's domain user somewhere here, and it should user count domain admin. Yeah, so I'm delivering the information. What you do with the information is a bit up to you. But like I said, this module is not allowing you to do much besides this. So if you would like to connect it with other stuff, like, I don't know, event logs or Office 365 and connect it with AD because your infrastructure demands it, that would be impossible for this. So we can have the same for Office 365. The difference with Office 365 is that I have not had time to spend as much as I had with Active Directory. So it had some basic data sets, and the basic data sets means you can mostly use it in Excel. So the goal here is that I will spend the next 3-4 months expanding this module for Office 365, expanding this module for other types of data, and you can use it in the future. The thing is that I update this module probably weekly, daily, sometimes, and if you go to GitHub and if you will submit to my GitHub, and you can see that I do changes every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. The thing with me is that I often change my mind, and so you have to be really careful. If something is working for you in production and it's working, don't update the module. I mean, just for your sake, because the thing is that I may have changed that I don't want the space here and I want it here. So I'm learning as I go. I have actually started producing all the PowerShell modules about a year ago. My prior experience to this was some scripts, and I didn't really wanted to dive into PowerShell that much, but the problem was that I was getting more and more clients having the same problems and copying the same script to different clients and fixing some stuff in that script. And I was like, okay, I need that stuff in the other script. And then I was copying it all over the place, not knowing which version, which client is using. So that gave me idea to go and learn PowerShell in a way where I can have one place for PowerShell modules that I can point all my clients or my servers that I want to be supported, and I'm using it that way. So we have the Office 365 export. As you see, there's really not much here. The problem is, for example, that I have not cleaned this data. I probably should have removed the run space ID, PS computer name, and so on. So this is not really useful for Word export, because this is like 5 columns. This is my domains that I have on my private tenant, Office 365. Nothing really out of ordinary here. And then in the Excel, it's much more readable. You can get all the data you need. Whether it's right now, it's all very basic. I do want to expand it, like I did with Active Directory module, so there will be much more data when I get to it. The third part of this PSWin documentation module is that one of my clients wanted to have an export to SQL. So they wanted each day that all domain users are sent to SQL for whatever reason, for compliance or whatever. So there's a switch, export SQL. There's the section, and you can configure the section. You tell it which table you can. For now, it's disabled, but you can do SQL table mapping. If you created a table yourself in SQL, it can actually do the mapping. So on the left, you have something that is in the data, and on the right, what is in SQL side. So it can do the mapping of the columns on the fly, and it can match this. But if you if you don't use this disable SQL table mapping, because if you want to use it, you would have to just remove this, and it would use that, but we don't want that. So right now, if you run this code, it should actually again ask Active Directory, but this time it will just ask for the things we wanted. And it will send the data to SQL if we expand this. So it created a query for us, and it sent all the data, and it created the tables, and it created everything. And there's even an option, I'm not sure if it works, but should be, that if the data changes, so that if I rename the columns, it will create the missing columns and add the data later on. Not here. I wanted to show you the SQL part, that it actually worked. So it sent all the 6 users I have. It's not really something amazing, but it works. My goal was fulfilled. So that would be it for the PSWin documentation part. Now, like I said in the beginning, the PSWin documentation part, I had to change everything, because when I started working on a new version of PSWin documentation, I wanted to actually, okay, I will modify this hash table, and you will have an option to export to XML, import from XML if you need it. But it was getting so complicated in the configuration part that I was like, it's not gonna work. People will be confused and they don't want to use it. I don't want to use it myself. I was getting really confused. Which option do I turn on? Which option do I turn off? So the idea was split out different parts of information. So I have created PSWin documentation ID module, which is then used by PSWin documentation. So if I update the PSWin documentation ID, you get all that data, whatever happened in it, in the PSWin documentation, the main module. But you can use this PowerShell module, the PSWin documentation ID, completely separately. So you can just use it as it is. This is like one command. It's called getWinID forest information. The module doesn't have more commands. The verbose information gives you this nice information, what is happening. You can turn it off, but for larger domains, I would say leave it, because it may be stuck for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you won't be able to tell what it's doing. There is a password quality switch. The password quality switch actually means that I have provided a single password in a file that the script will test. I'm doing this because if I provide a single password to this module, it actually gives more data that I need. You can provide probably the path to the file somewhere, like path to passwords, and you can provide your own password lists. But this module, if you use just the switch password quality, it will just enable a single password just to enable the features of this module. Now, what we've got here is the output. So the output is, as you have seen, we have set variable dataset forest. And dataset forest data is a simple hash table. So each value is saved as a hash table key, and then we have values here for each key. And if we wanted to get forest sites, we can simply get all the information. So you can take that information. You don't have to know all the commands for your AD. You don't have to run around searching on the internet how to do it and how can I find this information. You can just run this one command, create what I call a data set, and you have all the Active Directory information in one place. So you can do different stuff with it, like site links. No, sorry, it was forest site links, sorry. Forest site links. And we'll do the same. So you can export it to Excel, you can export it to HTML, CSV, that's up to you. That's your decision. And now, since this is just a forest, you can do the found domains, and it actually found one domain. If you would have a forest with multiple domains, then you would have the information here, and then you would just do something like this, and it would display another hash table within the forest with all the information for the domain. So each domain has its own information, each users, each servers count, servers, all the servers listed, and then we would do something like, oh, sorry. Maybe let's try it here. Maybe it will be easier to found domains, AD, Evotech support. Yeah, and then we would do domain users, and it would display all the users, right? So you can do with that data what you want. And if you check just one object, you get all the information. What I have done is actually I have prepared the data a bit. So you get when the password was last set, when it was last changed. You get the manager field, manager email. So all of that is done for you. You don't have to go into details. You just get all the information about ID with a single command. You can actually ask this command for just few types. So if we just need forest information, forest domain controllers and domain users, we don't have to scan all Active Directory to get that. So if we rerun this, it will just ask for the information that is required to build that information. So if domain users require me to get group membership, I will ask for groups membership, and then I will use that information within that data set. And this is what you limit it by types required, so you can actually give it as a parameter. I'm using it as an array, but you can do it yourself just by typing. So it has domain BitLocker information, it has domain labs information, so you don't have to do it yourself. So it's just one place, one command, and that's all you need. What you do with the data is a bit out of scope for this module. You can do anything. There's a switch, don't remove empty, because if we just remove this, it will remove all the information. For example, in this domain, I have no forest replication data and probably some others, so I don't need it. I could just remove this switch and the data would be gone. The thing is, I actually want to know that there was no forest replication, so I want it to be empty, and I want to see it. Okay, so this is the PSWin documentation AD part, which is the limited part, and this is the PSWin documentation AD part where you get everything as one big object. Now, for smaller domains, it will take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but some people reported with 40,000 users that there was like 16 hours. On the other hand, I have really spent some time with hash tables, optimizing the code, so after the change, they just waited like 1 hour. So depending on the size of your environment, you may get different results. Do let me know if you have some problems. I'm open on GitHub with everything if it's an issue, if it's a help, how to set it up, if it's something not working, just open an issue on GitHub. I'm pretty responsive. So now, like I said in the beginning, I actually wanted to start using PSWin documentation for different purposes. There was one guy called Brad, and he showed, I read his blog about how to create HTML reports with Active Directory data, and I was in love with HTML a bit, because it allows HTML comparing to Word allows you to get all the data you need, and you can fill it in on your screen. You don't have the limits of the Word application. And so I have created a PowerShell module called Dashimo, which is ability to export the data to HTML without much effort. So we have the same data set forest information, so you can ask for all the data from your Active Directory. And then there's Dashimo part. So Dashimo is really simple in use, as in you define that you want to create a dashboard. And then in this particular case, I'm looping for all the domains because I could have multiple domains within a forest, so I'm looping. And then there's a section, and then there's a table. If we want to here, you can see, for example, a much more simplified example. Okay, so we have just dashboard. We name the dashboard. We have a file, HTML, where we set it up. We want it to show on the screen right after it's done. And we want the section to be named domain users and the table with this information. So data forest, found domains, 8, okay, this is my private domain for robotic support, domain users. And I will, for now, I will remove the table conditional formatting, but I'll show you in a... So this is how Dashimo looks like. Since... Zoom in, okay. If we refresh it, it auto-sizes itself, it hides the data that it cannot fit into the screen. So we have the section name here, domain users. We have ability to export all this data to Excel, and it creates the Excel file. Yeah. And even PDF. Of course, PDF is a bit, I don't have PDF on this computer. You have to trust me on that. If there would be more users, more data, it would be allow me to page this, as in, for example, only 5 users, and then 15 users, and then so on. You can do a lot with this Dashimo. Let me quickly give you one more example in here. So let's... Okay. Now we have table conditional formatting. The way it works, or should at least work. A moment. Password last change days. So the way it works: 5 days. Password last change days. Comparison type operation. It's greater. That's 3. Oh, doesn't work. Password change it. Okay, let's maybe do a different example then. Maybe the other one will work. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so the idea here is that the table conditional formatting doesn't work on PowerShell level. It works on HTML level with JS script. So you can set multiple table conditions for the HTML, and it doesn't take any processing power to generate it. It just adds more information into HTML saying, please do the table conditional formatting for this and this column. And in this case, we have done the table conditional formatting that if the password last change days is above 3 or above 4, so it would give you a different color. So you can define different rule sets for different columns, for the same columns, multiple sets. The thing is that it will override the value that is the last one. So if you have the same column and if it matches greater than 3 and then greater than 4 and the value is 5, of course it will take the last color and it will not actually do anything more with it. You can set it per row. So if you set it per row, it should just mark the whole row. So you can use this. I'm using this for AD, but actually you can use Dashimo for SQL, whatever data you want. I have people reporting to me with showing me nice dashboard that they use for SQL backup stuff. and it just works. So this is a very simple scenario where you have simple section and one table, but you can actually create a lot of information with it. Let's see Dashimo here. I have one other Dashimo example. This Dashimo example is actually based on another part of this PSWin documentation module, and it's called PSWin documentation O365 health service. And what it does, it connects to Office 365 Azure and gets the information. When you log into Office 365, you usually get a message center with all the information, what's the status of the services with your Exchange Online and stuff like that. So this PowerShell module actually gets all the information from that place, and I'm using Dashimo to display it on different kind of information in different places. It supports invoking HTML tags, so if the message from the message board has pictures in it, it also shows it, as you can see on the screen. You have all the incidents, the incident messages, and of course you can, the way it works is that I have taken the same approach. So this module, PSWin documentation health service, is just one command that you run. If you run this command and you have the information, so you would get, again, it would be a hash table with all the information in place. So you don't have to use it in Dashimo, you can use it any way you want. So incidents, and it would show you all the incidents. And if you would like to limit the output, you can do it based on time or something like that. Just your imagination, how you use it. If you use it to send emails, that's fine with me. It's pretty straightforward to set it up. There's just application ID, application key, and tenant domain. The application ID and application key can be set in Azure, and you can simply get it done in 15 minutes. You can install this from PowerShell Gallery as all of my other PowerShell modules. Now, this is actually a good moment to talk about Dashimo again. So in this example, we're actually opening dashboard again. We have a tab, we have a section, and this is an invisible section. What this does is actually it tells the Dashimo that you want to add more sections within one row. So in this case, we would see, this would be the case of here. So we have one section, one tab, and this is how it works. So we have invisible section that makes sure that anything we put here, so we can actually go ahead and section name test, and then put table, data table, oh, sorry, data table, I've run this, sorry. Let's see, I will actually would like to use this data in Dashimo here, data table, and then we want to hide footer, and then we have multiple other options, like we have this, we can disable paging, disable ordering, we can disable many features that we have, we can disable export to Excel or just disable the PDF part. There's multiple options, you have to really dig into it, how it works. There's some documentation, I usually put the documentation on my blog with GitHub. So you're a bit on your own when working with it, but I'm really helpful in that kind of way where you can just simply open an issue on GitHub and I will really help you out if you have issues to set it up. Now let's rerun this. Oh, so something that there's a problem. I probably used it wrong. And then that data table. Sorry. Table action. HTML. Let me, no, dataset forest. Yeah, there is probably no date domain. So AD Evotex support. Will you get me the data? Okay. So you see, we added another section, and it's here. So you can expand. You can have multiple sections beneath it. You can just within one tab. So it's really flexible in what you do. Right now, it doesn't support charts, but I have a code that is working. I'm just not happy with the way you create charts, as in it's a bit complicated and not as easy to use as I would like it to be. So probably in like 2 months of time, I will add charts to it, so you can add it to your scripts or whatever. Now let's go back to our schedule. So there's another demo, and this demo is about Documentimo. So Documentimo is a PowerShell module called that is supposed to help you create Word documents. And the goal here was that in PSWin documentation, you get the Word document right away. So you don't have to do any configuration yourself, but you also were limited to actually using the way it provided it to you. So in Documentimo, you actually can write your own documentation with the same idea in place. So you open the document, kind of, you set up the table of content, you add a page break, you add a text, and then there's doc numbering, which is just a number within a section. And then within doc numbering, you can add more text, tables, text, tables, text, and you can expand it beyond what PSWin documentation has provided. So if you want to expand it with SQL data, that's fine. If you want to add anything other, that's fine. That's why I have created Documentimo, and that's why if you want to use PSWin documentation, be my guest. But if you know a bit of PowerShell and you want to customize it, if you rerun this, it should deliver exactly the same type of Word document that we have seen created by PSWin documentation. Just 2 minutes? Okay. So the same thing is I have created what's called Excelimo, and that's the idea is the same. So you create Excel, you create workbook properties, and then you have some worksheets that you define, and it should create an Excel with worksheets you defined. It should add the tab colors, just the way you want it to configure it. You can add more worksheets or less worksheets, that's up to you. Finally, I wanted to show you the last product, which is called Emailimo. Again, the emov part is I made one, so don't worry about the naming. It's really... So the idea here is that if you work with email, and if you want the emails to look pretty, you have to use HTML and CSS. And everyone probably sends an email with send mail, and they just configure the HTML, so they copy the headers and everything from somewhere or create it themselves, and then they have to know how HTML works, how you open the tags, how you close them. So this is the document that we have, and it's exactly the same as we had with PSWin documentation. So the Documentimo part works exactly the same. Just use it. Now, going back to Emailimo. So the way it works is it allows you to define the email in a way that you define it in Outlook kind of way, where you don't have to know HTML, CSS, or anything like that. So you define it as an email, then there's email header, which is email from, email to, email server, and email options, email subject, and that's an email header. Then there's email body, and you can tell email body that it should be font family Calibri, size 15. You can add text boxes, you can add text tables, with different colors, different fonts. It generally gives you a lot of different things. So, for example, email list item, it creates a list of items. It's really simple and easy to use, and it has one additional feature, which is attach self, which attaches the HTML to an email after it sends it. So the file path here that I defined is only for me is to, if you want to debug something, if you want to check the HTML, or you don't want to send email over and over to yourself and to see how it looks, you can just use the file path and it will open it up in Chrome or something like that. So if we send this email, there's actually another module here in play. It's called, let me add it quickly, but just PSWin reporting v2. This PowerShell module delivers this command find events. And this find events module, let me quickly go back to, I received an email, and without any HTML, it created sort of nice looking table, sort of nice looking text, a list, and different things, and it attached the HTML back to the email. And if we click on it, it allows us to open it. You get all the features that Dashimo had. So Excel export and CSV export. So you can use it in a way you had no other way before. Now, if we go back into this, find events is actually an event log parser. What it does is you don't have to define event IDs. You don't have to know the event IDs for particular events in your Active Directory. So for example, if someone adds a user to domain admins, or someone deletes the user, you would usually go to event log and find who did it and why he did it and when he did it. And find events simplifies this a lot because it defines multiple reports without you even touching event log. So for example, you just tell it, hey, the user changed details, and it gives you the details about users that have changed. So same for lockouts, same for status of the users. So if you are if you want to know how to get information from your event log and what happened in your Active Directory, the PSWin reporting v2 would be really helpful. It actually has like 400 stars on GitHub, so people seems to love it. Let me quickly send one more email with a bit more data, so you can see. Okay, it went through. Yeah. Now, we have used the same data we had with Office 365 Health module. So it created the table, then the incidents messages, and I told it that I want just 0 days. So just like 1 day of data, just last day of incident messages, and then we have whole table that expanded. And like I said, the table part in Dashimo and Emailimo has the invoke HTML tag. So anything that you provide within to the table, you can actually have HTML tags within it, and it will display it without any problem. Okay. So I'm a bit of rushing, right? Okay. Let's see if I can give you. Just going back to Excelimo for one moment, I have actually created Excelimo with one purpose. I wanted an easy way to create Excel. And if you create Excel with just one worksheet, it doesn't really do any magic. I know the code behind it is really bad, so I need to fix it, and I will be working on this. But with Excelimo, I have actually added parallel switch, which, when run, it actually starts processing all worksheets at the same time. So the data generated for all the worksheets is done in 4 seconds here, and if you take away the parallel part, it will take much, much longer. But So generally, we'll do just one by one by one by one. And the parallel switch is experimental. I have seen it lock up a few times. I have no idea why yet. So I will be working on Excelimo. Don't get used to it right now. Maybe not use it on production. But if you're into exploring, be my guest. So, any questions? Yes?
Thank you for talking us through such detail. Can I ask you to just give some more information on custom DLL that you mentioned right at the beginning?
Yes. So the DLL is from a company called Exceed. Actually, I have a session tomorrow about the DLL part, so you can come and... so the DLL is based on this. So this is a project which is written in a net library. The net library is MSPL license, so free to use. It only works with PowerShell 5.1. It doesn't work with core version yet. I will have a session tomorrow about it, so you can join. But this is the DLL I'm using. I actually was once a maintainer and developer for this project. It's actually quite popular. It's 900 stars or something. We gave it out to Exceed because I wanted that company to follow with more features, more data, because I wasn't just capable of delivering the Word DLL myself. So after the module, the DLL library here started like in 2009, and we have gave it out around 2015 or 2016 to this Exceed company, and that they just take it over, and they have two versions of that DLL. So that one DLL they are bound to keep keep free for everyone to use, but they have also a pay version if you want all the new features, all the, for example, core support is in that version. So you would have to pay up and use it. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. So thank you very much.